Hello and welcome to the West Tigers podcast. This is episode number 244 on a Wednesday night. Eddie joined by Gary and Declan, a usual midweek team. Gary, I told you a couple of hours ago, I said be ready tonight because I've been in a bad mood, as you know.
Yeah, very bad mood. I've been arguing with you all week.
Yeah.
You think you win arguments, but they're really poor points most of the time.
And Declan, it's good to see you. I feel like you haven't been on for months, but it's only been, well, you were on Sunday night and I wasn't there, so I suppose you have been on lately.
Yeah, but if Eddie's not on the podcast, was there even a podcast to begin with? Probably not. So I suppose you're still right.
Yeah, I did listen to it. You did do some, Gary, there was some constructive debate, but maybe it's time to get a little bit, ranting and less constructive the way I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah, I'm happy to debate you. I'm happy to take you on.
Well,
we're not exactly on the same page, but...
Not always, but it's never personal, I don't think, Gary, and there's plenty to talk about tonight, boys. There's the breaking story surrounding the club's interest in Mitchell Pearce. We'll touch off that off the bat, and we'll also talk a little bit about the coaching setup because I've been the source of my bad mood the past couple of weeks, some of the things that are going on there, a bit about the spine, and, of course, the Broncos preview. On Saturday night, we take on the Broncos and Yachty's quiz to finish. So, boys, this could be a record-long podcast. We'll try and keep it to our hour, maybe slightly over an hour, but we'll see how we go. Declan, your initial thoughts. Tigers interested in Mitchell Pearce. Not sure if it's for this year. Rumoured perhaps a 2-year deal. Money figures, they say maybe $700,000 a year. I'm sure that's just speculation at the moment, but what's your initial thought?
Well, it's very on brand, isn't it? A player that, when he was at the peak of his powers, wanted absolutely nothing to do with his. There was never even any suggestion that he was really a chance to come into the Tigers. And then we find ourselves desperate in need of a kind of stopgap option. And then, all of a sudden it's in play when he'll be 34 like next week, I think. And he'll probably be like 35, 36 when the deal ends. And it just seems like a complete West Tigers move for me.
You say that, but I know we have both been vocal on the chat. I think everyone has been that if you miss out on your plan A, which was clearly Mitchell Moses, then you've got to move straight on to your plan B. So what's the problem?
Well, this wouldn't really have been my plan B, to be honest. I think that there would have been a few more options that I would have taken. Like, obviously, George Williams, there was that article from the Mo that came out that said they weren't interested in releasing him. I think everything's up for negotiation when it comes to the Super League. We heard that with John Bateman as well. And there was also that it was Lewis Dodd from the what's it called? Sorry, St. Helens, that has recently signed with a player agent from the NRL. So you'd like to think that he would potentially be on the market as well. He's a 21-year-old. He's got huge upside. He's already played and won a Super League grand final. So that's a lot of good signs from him. Obviously, maybe the Tigers approached both of them and they got told to bugger off. I don't know. I'm not privy to that. But I think a 34-year-old Mitchell Pearce would not have been high on my list of potential recruits, to be honest.
Most definitely George Williams, and I agree Dodd are better options. I would hope that both options we've explored before we're looking at Mitchell Moses. Mitchell, he is at the end of his career, but it's not hard to be in better form than what Luke Brooks is displaying at the moment. And I think that's the angle we've got to look at it from, is we can't keep going with the halves that we have. And this is a fairly desperate play, but we're in a fairly desperate situation. We need better in the halves that we had. I was very worried leading into the season about the quality of our halves. So if we don't have Mitchell Moses, we can't get George Williams, then we do still have to upgrade in that position. And I haven't seen Mitchell Moses' form in the Super League. I don't watch much of the Super League, but he hopefully, I can't imagine him playing worse than what Luke Brooks has been playing this season.
Yeah, I think my opinion is I'd like him for a couple of years, preferably this year. It's very early in the year, and like one of you boys said, the Super League, there's usually things up for grabs there with transfer fees, and if you're going to pay players more, then they are likely to possibly want to come back. And I guess the anger, Declan, from fans or the confusion comes from the fact that, in the off-season, we let a younger halfback go, /lock in Jackson Hastings, who's currently playing reasonable football at Newcastle. We also let Jock Madden go, and it was all the eggs were in the basket of Luke Brooks. Tim Sheen's made that quite clear. So I think he's going to have to answer a few questions about this.
Yeah, and that's 100% it. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's just an admission that they did mess up putting all their eggs in the Luke Brooks and Mitchell Moses basket, to be fair. I think the reason why they went all in and let Jackson Hastings go and drop Madden was because I really think that they thought they were a great chance to bring a Mitchell Moses back. Obviously, we know that's not true. And Luke Brooks has proven to be exactly what we knew he was last season and the season before. So it really has blown up in the club's face. And it just seems like this is just an admission that they got it completely wrong because it's only round 5 and they're already looking for a veteran player in the Super League who's semi-retired, to be honest. So I think that just tells you everything you need to know about this club in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Declan, you have been probably the most consistent over a couple of years on Luke Brooks, the facts you don't rate him. But Gary, I suppose, Declan said we all knew, but there was some hope at the start of the year. Even with me and yourself about, we did have a better forward pack and can he be better? But I think it's pretty clear that he just looks like a broken footballer to me at our club. I actually feel sorry for him. I saw a comment, I think it was either Willie Mason or Justin Horro, the podcast they do, and he said, I've watched it. One of them said he's watched his body language for years and he just looked rattled. He just looks like he completely needs to change. And this was the grave worry. I think I touched on it in preseason. I said, what happens if we're 0-4? And here we are, 0-4, and he's getting the same old under the pump like he usually is. And I think I know he's off contract and we're not going to probably re-sign him, you would think, but surely they've made a mistake here in the off-season with tying themselves to Brooks and not Hastings or Madden.
I think the fact that you're wearing a Philadelphia 76ers hat at the moment, I think there's a little bit of a crossover there. I think Ben Simmons in the NBA is in a similar situation to what Luke Brooks is, where the pressure of the situation is just too much now. There's too much of a burden to carry from moving forward, all the scar tissue that he.
Why couldn't Tim Sheen see that, Gary? That's what annoys me. Like, I know he was away for 10 years, but he saw last year, and last year was a train wreck. I just don't understand that.
I personally, I think it's that people keep looking at there is potentially a good footballer in there somewhere, and I think people and coaches are quite arrogant people, and I think they look at it and they think, I can fix this guy, I can get the best out of him, and I think we're now at the point where over the last 10 years it's been shown that that's not really going to happen. It doesn't matter who the coach is. The only coach that really got him playing at a really good level was Ivan Cleary. And I think it's now being shown that, I don't think it's fixable, at least at our club. And I think that burden of that weight of the 11 years of no finals that he's been here for most of is just weighing him down now. And you and I spoke about it at times last season, Eddie. I don't see a way of that breaking out of that now.
I also think with the Tigers in general, and this isn't really aimed at Tim Sheens, but what I've observed with the relationship with the Tigers and Luke Brooks is it almost seems a little bit toxic in the sense that it seems that they'll bend over backwards to prove everyone wrong and to like prove that they were right and he's not the problem and he's a good halfback, to the point where they're just completely, like as you said, like Gerard Hastings, Gerard Jock Madden, just like throw it out, not great, but like pretty good options like out the window. And it just seems that they're more like focused on, proving the people wrong about Luke Brooks and actually winning footy games. I know that's just me being irrational, but honestly, it's just terrible. And it just also seems that they're just determined for it to work. Otherwise, because if it doesn't work, this entire like 6-year plan they've had going on has just been a complete waste of time if Luke Brooks goes without playing finals. And that's just what it looks like to me.
I don't think Jackson Hastings was our long-term solution. But right now, it'd be great to have him because we've gone in this season so skinny in the halves that as soon as something went wrong with Ivan, and it wasn't just form, it was a chance of injury, we don't really have anyone else who can play that role at any sort of level. And the problem is both Luke Brooks and Adam Doueihi have come out and played those halves roles at a completely unacceptable level. And that is a big part of why we're sitting where we are now.
Yeah, I think, Declan, I understand your frustration there, but surely it's just this. I know it's over a number of coaches, and there have been coaches that have re-signed him on more money than he was worth. But I think, I don't want to turn this into we should have kept Madge, because I don't think we should have. But I think if we did keep Madge, I think Hastings would be our halfback. I think Brooks would be in Newcastle. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I can definitely see why you would think that. I think there's definitely an avenue there because Hastings and Madge, it did seem like they had similar ideas in terms of how to win footy games. But at the end of the day, as well, Madge he never dropped Brooks. He never played New South Wales
He did drop him once. He did drop him once on the bench,
to the
mate.
bench. Yeah.
Well, that's as far as anyone's ever gone in 10 years.
Yeah, but even then, is that really getting dropped? Because I think it was only for 2 games and he was back there anyway. So for all we knew, it could have been like a Jackson Hastings thing at 7 and then a Luke Brooks 5'8" combination. That could have been very clearly that as well. And also, I just remember that article when I think it was Joey John said that Luke Brooks needed to leave to fulfill his potential. And it just Madge's response in the press conference was just no, he's going to reach his potential here. So I think Maguire was every bit in the Luke Brooks train to try and prove that he could get the best out of them, just as much as Sheens was this year.
I think initially he was, but I mean, Gary, what else is he going to say last year? He has to say that if he's his coach. I get the feeling that he was angling towards either Hastings at 7, maybe keeping Brooks at 6, but that was where they looked their best in the couple of wins they had last year over South and Parramatta.
Yeah, I thought that combination of Brooks and Hastings worked quite well, or Hastings and Brooks because Hastings was halfback. I thought that worked quite well last year, but we still weren't winning very many games last year either. All I know at the moment is if Hastings was here, he'd be playing halfback this weekend, but I don't think he'd be what I'd be looking for from a halfback next year either. Though, in saying that, if you had asked me a month ago whether I'd be contemplating Mitchell Pearce as halfback for next year, I would have said no to that as well. And right now, I think that is definitely an option that we should be at least exploring.
Well, it doesn't appear to be many other options, Declan. I mean, I think the club have explored George Williams, and the Warrington chief was pretty forthright in saying he's not going to be released, and they're actually looking at re-signing him. So where else do you turn? I don't see a solution. I don't see Wakeham as a long-term solution. I'd like to see him get the opportunity to prove himself this year, but he came in January or February. He wasn't the plan.
Yeah, but if you look at John Bateman, I'm pretty sure Wigan said that he wasn't going to go anywhere either. I mean, these things, they're all negotiable. And although Williams is a good player for Warrington, I don't think the financial situation of the clubs there is so good that they could turn down a massive transfer fee that for someone who wants to leave anyway. So I think that everything's negotiable, as I said. And it's just so disappointing because it just looks like they went for the quick fix as opposed to maybe the better long-term position. And I've always said before, if they can't get someone like George Williams, then why not invest in a younger half? Honestly, why not and develop someone? Because
lose every game for the next 2 years, you can't do that.
But why do those things go hand in hand, though? I don't understand.
Well, look how they're going now. They don't look like winning a game. They've got no one, outside of Wakeham, Brooks and Dewey. And which younger half that you're talking about would be ready to play NRL in the next 2 years? I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that plan, but what would be the problem with having Mitchell Pearce mentor a younger half for the next 2 years? No,
it's not necessarily that I'm against the idea of Mitchell Pearce. I'm just really frustrated because yet again we find ourselves in a position where we have another stopgap option where he's just going to be there for 2 years. And then we'll probably be in the same position after that. And then we'll probably get another stopgap option. There doesn't seem to be any long-term planning about who is going to take over in the halves. And just to go back on rookies, look at Jonah Pezzett for the Melbourne Storm. He absolutely blitzed Brooks and Wakeham against us. So I don't necessarily think that rookie's going to come in and be absolutely terrible. But I really like the idea when Sheens sacked Madge last year. He said that they were going to be a development club, that they're going to bring people through and they're going to cherry-pick people that needed positions that they didn't have of local juniors. And we don't really have a lot of local juniors that are ready to play in the halves at the moment, but there doesn't seem to be that forward thinking, which is really frustrating for me.
Our lack of depth in the halves at the moment means you can actually do both. You can find a young guy and you can put him with someone more experienced, like a Mitchell Pearce. There's no reason why we can't do that because right now, there's no one in our club that I want playing half or 5'8" next year. And so they're both positions that we really need to be looking at. So there's no reason why you can't bring someone over like Mitchell Pearce to mentor a young guy. And it's probably not a bad idea to do because, as you said, Mitchell Pearce isn't going to be here for a long time if he comes. It's going to be a very short contract. And maybe he can get someone ready to take over that position by the time he's finished.
On Brooks, Declan, where do you see the rest of the season for him? Because they're going to be thinking a few things now. Like if they want him to have some value, you probably got to keep him in first grade. And also, there's no one else in reserve grade who I can name off the top of my head. Maybe Will Smith, who's just a journeyman who they could play in front of him. Would they explore something like a simple trade and say, Luke, go and lie on the beach in France for a couple of years and get away from this and go play for Catalans?
Yeah, I tend to think, I kind of stated on the pod on Sunday that I thought you can't really drop him. One, because, as you said, there's not really many other options. And two, because I think he's just such a confidence player that if you were to drop him in reserve grade, then you might lose him for the rest of the season. And as you said, his value is not really going to go up. But the thing with trades in the NRL and rugby league in general is just there's too many parties for it to happen most of the time. So if you wanted to potentially say like, oh, the Tigers are interested in sending Brooks to Catalans, and then maybe Catalans are also interested in taking Brooks for Pierce, that's great. But then you have to have the players agree to it as well. And is Luke Brooks keen to go to France for a long-term contract? I'm not too sure. Like only he knows that, but I'm going to doubt that because he's got a young family. And he could probably get like an NRL contract playing second fiddle to someone like in the NRL.
Yeah, look, I don't think that he's probably looking to go to France. As Declan said, he's got a young family that they've just had a baby in the last 12 months. So I think it's unlikely that he goes. And he seems to be a very family orientated person. So I think that would play an important role in his decision. And I do agree that I think that there is a club somewhere, even the possibility of teaming back up with Hastings at Newcastle Knights. I think there's a chance of that someone, and I'm not saying it'll necessarily be Newcastle, but I think there's someone in the NRL that would pick him up for a lower level contract. Nothing compared to what he's on now.
Yeah. It's just such an interesting one because I just can't, like, what's his value? We really don't know, do we? Because with Newcastle, there was all that talk about how he was going to go, and it looked like it was a pretty good deal. But I honestly, in some ways, feel sorry for Brooks because he probably should have taken that 3-year deal with Newcastle because now, I don't think anyone would sign him as a starting seven, would they?
There may be a club that does exactly what the West Tigers have done over the last couple of years, and there may be a coach somewhere that thinks, I'm the one who can unlock him as a player and get the best out of him. But I think what's been shown over the last, at least the last 12 to 18 months, is that's probably not going to happen.
Declan, the spine for the rest of the year, I saw some comments from Tim Sheens. I don't know if actually it was Brandon Wakeham. He was fronting the press at Concord this week, and it seems like they are going to at least settle on this for the next month, which you have to at some point. I think I read that we've had a different 1-6-7-9 combination nearly every game now. What are your thoughts just on the short term of that spine combination of Dewey 1, Wakeham and Brooks in the halves, Appy 9?
Yeah, I think I like it. I think that obviously, as you said before, we've had a bit of an unsettled spine. That's been mostly because of injury and poor form. I wouldn't really say that, it's been the team being dysfunctional. But yeah, I kind of mentioned before that I thought that it was a tough ask for Adam Dewey for 1 week's preparation to go into the Melbourne Storm game with turf for toe, which is really tough, especially when you have to run so much at fullback. So, I'm pretty keen on just letting them settle down there. Hopefully Brooks can build some confidence. Hopefully Wakeham can show something. And then I would also be trying to debut Bulla on the wing as well, and maybe do a little bit of switching between him and Adam Dewey between games just to see where he's at as well in terms of my spine options going forward.
I know, Gary, you're not a huge AD fan at fullback. Neither am I long term, to be honest. What do you make of just sticking with this combo for the next month?
I think that's what we're going to see. It probably wouldn't be the decision I would make. I'd also, in those halves, I'd like to see Wakeham take on probably a bit more of a primary role compared to Luke Brooks. I think we've still got that the wrong way around. I think Brooks was probably the dominant half on the weekend, and I think it probably needs to be Brendan Wakeham, and that's not saying Brendan Wakeham's a superstar player. That's because of the form that Luke Brooks has shown this season. I'm still... a couple of years ago when we had Adam Dewey playing fullback, I didn't want to see it ever again. And not because he's terrible in the position, I think that's unfair. He's very good under the high ball, but just that speed, he's quite often slow to get to a ball that's on the ground. And if he does get into space, he doesn't have the pace that you want from a fullback to go the length of the field. They're my only concerns around him in that role. I think he's very good under the high ball. He chimes into the back line reasonably well most of the time. But I really just think it's that lack of speed and a little bit of positional play, individual positional play in that fullback role that lets him down. I guess we're going to see it over the next month. So I hope he can really surprise me and show us that he's a gun fullback, but I don't expect to see it.
Yeah, it did make me laugh a little bit when Tim Sheen said Adam Doueihi was the best fullback at the club. I just thought of Gary immediately and had a little bit of a chuckle to myself. Take that how you will. But
I don't think, Declan, I don't think Tim Sheen's word is, something to hang your hat on at the moment, the way he's coaching.
Well, it made me laugh anyway. So,
boys, Dane Laurie, Gary, I just think it's close to the end of the road for him. Anything can happen, at least at this club, with injuries, but I didn't watch the reserve grade, but I think you boys streamed in and said you weren't too impressed with what he served up on Saturday.
The biggest problem I had with him on Saturday was the same thing we saw in first grade. And I was actually quite happy with most of his play in first grade, but he's letting balls bounce and he's not attacking bombs far too often. And he did it again multiple times on the weekend. One of them led to a try again, where he's not attacking a ball and it's costing us points. It just can't continue to happen. And that's really my biggest issue with him. And I think it's at the point where if you have a guy who's not attacking the ball regularly, then you can't play him in first grade. And if we're not playing him in first grade, then I don't expect him to be at our club for much longer.
Declan, Nofoaluma, he looks like he's injured, out for potentially a month. Do you think this is the end for him, or do you think he could potentially come back? We are fairly skinny in the outside back, so there is a chance, but I don't think Tigers fans are holding their breath waiting for him to get back.
Well, if Tim Sheen was looking for a reaction from Nofoaluma to kind of prove that he was a first grade player playing in a reserve grade, he definitely didn't show it on the weekend. I thought he was terrible, honestly. And it's not the first time that Nofoaluma has been dropped, and he just has absolutely played really badly in reserve grade. He did it last year before he went to the Storm against the Bunnies in reserve grade. It was just an absolute shocking game. And I think going to the Storm, I think that gave him a mental excuse that it wasn't his fault, the position he was in. I think he still thinks it's because he plays for the Tigers that he's not playing well. I think he needs to have a right look in the mirror and admit that he is the reason why he's in this position at the moment, and it's no one else's fault except his, because he was awful in reserve grade. He made probably the worst pass coming over 20 to, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Tristan Riley. Just a lazy option, a lazy pass, knock on, and then one try just before, I think it was 10 seconds to go before halftime. He absolutely shoots out the line, gets absolutely no one, and then North Sydney come out and they score in the corner, leaving Tristan Riley just absolutely isolated. And he doesn't look like the player that takes 20 hit-ups anymore, makes 200 meters. That he just looks he's like far past that, and it's just kind of sad to see the player he's become, to be honest.
And the other big problem I think he has is Junior Tupou's form as well. Like, he wasn't amazing or anything, but he did his job, and I thought he showed a lot of potential on Friday night. So I expect that position to be really hard to get back for Nofoaluma, because I think Junior Tupou is going to make that position his own this year.
Talking about just, boys, the coaching setup, and that's, I guess, the worry for me is this is a long-term plan that the club has mapped out. It obviously wasn't the first choice, but it became the first choice when Serrato, of course, knocked them back and guaranteeing Benji for 2025. But I just have concerns early, Declan. I don't want to totally write it off. But those couple of things, that they hitched their wagon to Luke Brooks. They also, I guess, convinced David Nofoaluma to stay and start him on the wing. To be fair, they have made some changes. They haven't just sat on their heels and dug in. But is it a concern that we've put together a coaching staff that is just totally non-equipped to coach an NRL side in 2023? And that probably sounds a little bit disrespectful, which I don't mean to come across like that. But Tim obviously hadn't coached for a decade, coached a little bit in England with no success. and Benji and Robbie coming basically straight, from a playing and media career into coaching. I have big concerns just what I've seen on the field the first month.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I think after the Cameron Serraldo fiasco, it seems like the club tried to take a panicked half court shot from them in basketball just to kind of get the publicity, show how amazing they are, how forward thinking they are, and they went for a really high risk, high reward coaching structure when there were a few safer options available. I won't say who I'm speaking about, but if anyone's ever listened to Gary complain about him, you'll definitely know who I'm speaking about. But yeah, it just seems that it's been a really high risk, high reward situation that we're in at the moment, and it doesn't look like we're going to get those high rewards anytime soon.
Gary, it's ordinarily a new coach comes in, and it would be unfair to say after 4 games, expect to turn a wooden spoon team around. But do you hold some of the same concerns? I know you're not at the level of concern I potentially am, but it's not the fact they've lost the 4 games, Gary. It's just the way they've sort of gone about it with the tactics they had the first couple of weeks and the selections they made in the off season. I guess that's why I'm worried about it.
Look, the thing that stops me from getting to the level you're at, Eddie, is I look at who our best players have been. And I've said this on the pod already. I looked at all our new recruits that have come in. They're our strongest players at the moment. The players that we are having difficulty with are the players that have been here long term. That, to me, is a positive that I'm hanging on to. There's also been adjustments to the game plan. I think those first couple of games we were going way too much side to side. There was too much interchanging between the forwards, and I think we even spoke about it leading into round 1 that was a concern that we had. And I think at least last week we were playing much more direct through the middle, and I think that style of football that we played last week, I think we're going to be able to improve on that and build into a better side over the next month. Now, the problem with the next month is we're hitting some really good sides. So I'm looking. Look, I never thought we're going to be a side that made the 8 this year. I think I made that fairly clear leading into the season. But I wanted to see progress. I think the first 2 weeks were kind of a step back in the style of football. But I think there's been adjustments made to that, and I'm hoping that those adjustments are going to improve what we're doing over the next month. Not that, but that may not show in the wins column.
Declan, you, I guess for me, just looking at body language, I guess Tim Sheens has a right to be frustrated. You would be if you've lost your first 4 games coming back, but I just watch him and Appy in those press conferences, and it just looks like there's a bit of a disconnect there. I don't know if it's whether it's in terms of the style of play, whether they disagree or whether Benji's doing a lot of the coaching. But do you think they're getting closer towards, like Gary said, a style of play that could potentially get this side off the bottom of the table?
Yeah, I don't know. Every week it just seems like they kind of fix one thing, but kind of lose a little bit of perspective and progress in another thing, because possession was just, and completions were just so bad the first 3 games that we never really gave ourselves a chance to compete, to be honest. And then when you look at the Melbourne Storm game, I think we actually completed 7-8%, which is really good compared to what we did before, but we just never took our opportunity. So I think until we can just ice our chances in attack, especially in the 20 of the opposition, I think we're still going to struggle, because even average teams like the Knights against the Raiders, they could score in the red zone of their opposition when they had enough possession, but we just can't do that enough at the moment.
Having a look at that Storm game, I think we got to positions and we created enough chances to win that game. I think most people can look at that game and see that. The issue we had was around our weakness in the halves, and you can make an argument that around who we kept over the off-season and who we let go in the halves. That's definitely an argument you can make that I'm not going to sit here and completely try and argue with you. I think there's probably reasons behind those decisions, but ultimately the results on the field is what needs to be shown. And I think the results on the field with how our halves are playing, I think that's the biggest weakness in this side at the moment. A couple of those plays, and I know that this is going to keep coming back to Luke Brooks, because I think if we had a different halfback last weekend, we probably win that game. If we had a halfback who could take advantages of the space that was created for him out wide and and the overlaps that were created for him out wide, I think we probably win that game. So that's the biggest area of what we're doing we have to fix at the moment. Structure-wise, I thought we played fairly well on the weekend. We created the opportunities. We got to the positions we needed to. We just couldn't finish them off.
Yeah, I'll tell you why Luke Brooks was kept over the summer. It's because he's fast. Remember that? Like, he has speed to burn. And if anyone, he was the only one in the team that wouldn't get run down in 100 meters. Like, obviously, it doesn't really matter anymore because, no one's going to take an intercept and score. But,
But I mean, Declan, you say that with a smirk on your face, but that was coming from Tim Sheens, the coach you've put faith in. That was his quote, that he's the fast guy that could run 100 meters.
Yeah, well, I'm only smirking because I have deep pain inside, and that's how I deal with trauma. So don't judge me.
We all are in a little bit of pain at the moment. But Gary, let's talk a little bit about just Benji. Does this mean anything for Benji? Obviously, he's got what I assume is the guarantee for 2025. It's out there. I don't know if a winless, let's say worst case scenario, they don't win a game this year, and I think will win some games this year. But does that say Tim Sheens has got to go, or they've got to rip up this plan, or do you think it's just business as usual and hope Benji's better than Sheens?
I think the ultimate goal is to set the club up for Benji Marshall taking over. I don't see that changing. I don't even really see the possibility of them moving him starting forward, because I think the whole setup is for him to take over in 2025. And I really doubt that this club is going to get rid of a coach who is a club legend, highly instrumental in our only premiership, and I highly doubt they're going to get rid of him before he even gets an opportunity to coach a game.
Yeah, I think under this management structure, I think Benji and Sheens are relatively safe. The only thing I would say is that if you were to say if we were to go winless this season, or if we were to win something crazy like 2 games, then if someone like Pascoe was moved on, and then for some reason like the chairman Lee Hadjimentelis, if he moved on as well, and they got new people into that position, I think then if you're Benji Marshall and Tim Sheens, you would be a little bit worried, because potentially the new people would come in and say whoa, this is crazy. Like, Benji Marshall's never coached a game of even juniors before. Why are we doing this? That's not my opinion, but that's just what a potential new person coming in might think, which isn't unreasonable from outside looking in.
I don't see a new person coming into the club, especially from outside the club, and one of the first decisions I'd have to make is to sack probably the biggest name in the club before he's even coached a game. I don't see anyone who's going to go into a CEO role and make that decision.
But if we don't win a game, or we win 2 games all season, are the fans really going to care that they sacked Benji Marshall? They're just going to think that we've won 2 games all season. Look, it was a complete disaster considering the good players we signed this season. And I just want to be clear, this isn't what I would do, but this is just what I think could happen if there was a change in the management structure of the club. Most
management practices are to go in and observe before you actually make these big decisions like that anyway. I just really highly doubt that someone comes into the club and makes that decision as one of the first decisions they make. No matter what you think of the coaching setup, no matter what you think of Benji Marshall, it's going to put off, because Benji can be polarizing, but he does have a lot of people who support him. He does have a lot of people who believe in him. And I don't see someone walking into a club and really upsetting that many people in the first decision that they make.
Well, it might not be the first decision they make. They might, let Tim Sheens, say, for example, the new person comes in at the end of this year, and they give Tim Sheens, 2024 to see how it goes, and not much has improved. And it's not a knock on Benji Marshall. This has nothing to do with him. It's just the fact that, the club with him, they're going for a home run, aren't they? They're going for a really big swing of the bat, but they maybe they just need, to get to first base or second base with a more safe option, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're both saying. I do think, Declan, that if that was to happen, and I don't think it will, because I don't know, if these guys that run in the club have the I don't know if I want to use the word, but I don't think they're going to resign. I just don't think that's in them. So new people that come in the NFL, Gary, they often they want to make a change because they want it to be their man, their person. So I could see, we are talking worst case scenarios here. I'll just put that on the table. We're not saying to sack Benji, but is there a world where maybe Sheens says halfway through the year, well, how about you just take over, Benji? Or is he really taking the hits for him at the moment? Because I listened to the Chris Ironton talk on their in-house podcast during the week, or it might have been with Ask the Boss with Pasco, and he was talking about running the blue shirt, and he's saying he's getting the messages from Benji. And Declan said maybe that's not unusual. The assistant coach is doing all the messaging, but I do see, Trent Robinson up there with the walkie-talkie and stuff. So could that be a potential thing that happens where Tim Sheens only lasts a year and they maybe bring this forward a little bit?
Look, on the first thing on the walkie-talkie, there's a lot of assistant coaches that do. Even when Madge was coaching, there was times where other people were on the walkie-talkie. That's not that unusual. Now, talking about Benji maybe taking over from Tim Sheens early, if this is going to work, that has to be a transition anyway. I don't expect a situation where we go from one day Tim Sheens being the coach and then the next day Benji Marshall is. I think that's something that will happen gradually over the next 18 months leading into the end of next season. So I kind of expect that to be happening anyway. Would I be surprised if he's coaching for the second half of next season? No, because that's probably a plan in place anyway in his development. The idea is they're meant to be developing him as a coach. So I doubt that wouldn't surprise me at all. Is there a chance we don't win until this time next year and they tell Tim Sheens he's no longer required? Of course there is. But I would be very surprised if that happened.
Declan, is there a world where you'd prefer right now that we took perhaps a different route in the off-season? We were both, I suppose, hopeful that this coaching sort of setup would work, but there was John Morris on the table, there was Shane Flanagan, you would have Des Hasler on the table now. If you were just starting afresh right now and you didn't have these contracts and long-term plan in place, would you prefer a different route?
So, in terms of the continuity, I'm a huge advocate for it. I think the club has just made their bed and then they need to lie in it because, only the West Tigers could sack someone, 1 year into, a 5-year coaching setup. But if that wasn't the case, and we could go back in time, I think I would heavily consider someone like Shane Flanagan, to be honest. Not necessarily because I think he's a better coach that will lead to more success in the future. I just think his hands were probably a lot safer than the hands of the coaching team we have at the moment, and he's just proven. Not that he's proven more, it's just that he's proven it more recently, as you like to allude to with Tim Sheens being out of the industry for 10 plus years. I think Shane Flanagan, he's proven that he can build a team from the ground up because, look what he did with Cronulla and look how they're flying right now.
That's all right, Gary. I'm not going to ask for your opinion because I know what it is on Flanagan, so we're going to move on. I know this has been a bit of a grim episode so far, but, we're not just here to talk fluff when you're 0-4, and I hope we're sort of covering it as honestly as we can without being disrespectful for the guys that are obviously doing their best. I have no doubt Tim Sheens and Benji and Robbie and Pasco have all worked tirelessly and are doing their best to turn this around, but it's just not happening at the moment. We've just got to call it as we see it. Gary, before we preview the game, I'm going to do a quick game of buy, sell, and hold. I've got 8 quick questions. You're only allowed to hold once. Let's just stick to one word, and I'll ask you to expand if I'm not happy with your answer. The team can still make the top 8 in 2023, Gary. Buy, sell, hold.
I'm selling that.
Yeah, I've got to sell that. Declan?
I'm selling that as well.
The team will win the wooden spoon this season, Gary. Buy, sell, hold.
Sell that as well. I think we'll get some wins down the track. It might not be for a little while, but I expect a couple of sides to come back a little bit as well.
I'm gonna sell that. I think that the Dragons look like they're going to combust quite heavily, and also the Dolphins look like Sean O'Sullivan's going to be out for 12 weeks.
You reckon ahead of the Dolphins, Declan?
Well, I think they've started really strongly, but I do see injuries and depth being a bit of an issue for them. And plus, like the team that struggles at the very start of the season, like a lot of the time they don't end up getting the spoon because it's usually the team that fades out in the second half that wins it. So I'm hopeful that by that logic, someone else will be worse than us. But I'm definitely not 100% confident in this settle.
Unfortunately, Declan, it was us who started slow last year and finished with the spoon, even though there were times where we were not on the bottom, but we did lose our first 5 last year.
But I would argue it was the Bulldogs, though, that were really poor the first half of the season. And then they kind of went up and we went down, even though we did have a slow start as well.
Gary, question 3. Dane Laurie will play more than 10 first grade games in 2023. Buy, sell, hold.
I'm in regards to the last I'm selling, he could end up somewhere else and play some games there, but I don't think he'll play a lot of games here. And if he doesn't fix the issue up with the high ball, I doubt he's going to play many games anywhere.
Declan, I'm going to sell that because unless AD gets injured, I think he could be out of the side for a while.
Yeah, I can as well. I'm going to sell. I also think that it's a great chance that he could be at another club as well because rumor is that they've taken the 1-year contract extension off the table. So I could see him moving on to another club to free up a roster spot for us.
Gary, question 4. John Bateman will establish himself as our lock forward in 2023.
I'm not a big fan, so I'm going to sell that. I'm not a big fan of him at lock. I think we need a little bit more ball skill at lock than he probably has.
Interesting, this one, Declan, because he wasn't pigeonholed on the right. You saw him set up that try where he floated to the left and palmed off a couple of people and he spent a bit of time in the middle. I don't think I'd like him at 13 because he's such an unstructured player that I think that 13 role, if you're going to have someone there, for the 80 minutes, you want someone who you sort of know who's going to shovel the ball left or right. I think he's better to start on the right and perhaps float a little bit when he wants to.
Yeah, I think I'm going to hold it. I don't hate the idea. I think that he's just one of those players that you just want the ball in his hands so much as possible. Sorry, and we have Happily on one edge, and then someone like Sean Bloor could play on the other edge. So they do have those big, powerful back rowers who can replace him. But I just think that you just got to play him wherever. He's such an unorthodox player that you just got to let him pop up wherever he wants, really.
Look, I think he did actually play a bit of the lock role on the weekend. When Sean Bloor came on, Asaya, Sean Bloor, and Bateman were all on at once. So I think during that time, Bateman probably was playing that lock role. But I'd be playing him on an edge, but just with a free license to go other places on the field. I don't think you lock him down just in one.
I was listening to, it was actually Gary, it was Luke Keary who would know a thing or two about good structure at a team like the Roosters, and he sort of mentioned he didn't think Bateman would be a great 13 just for the fact that he's more an unpredictable sort of footballer.
Yeah, he's got that little bit of an awkwardness about him, even his running style, and I don't think he'd be a real good person to be feeding your halves and that sort of stuff, which the modern lock needs to do. So I'd be looking at someone else doing that role, but I'd be quite happy with him getting into the middle and taking some hit-ups in the middle. And
God, he's a good footballer though, isn't he? Like, I mean, we had doubts over the off-season, but I've nearly cancelled those doubts after 2 games. I know it's early, but I've just seen he's just a level above in terms of his just competitiveness. He does remind me, in a different mould, he reminds me of Gareth Ellis. He's just a level above in terms of, I think, the player that he is.
Yeah, he has made our pack, I think. Just the expectations he has on himself, you can see they're quite high. The energy levels he plays with, the aggressiveness he plays with. Aggressiveness is something that we've really lacked in our side for a long time, and I think he brings that in spades. So I like you, Eddie, I did have my doubts over the off-season, but yeah, they're gone for me. I think he's going to be a really good signing, at least for the first couple of years of it. It may be a bit different towards the end of the contract, but I'm very happy with what he's showing now.
Declan, buy, sell, hold. Jerome Buller is ready for first grade.
I've already used my hold, so I'm gonna say buy, but I think that I would like to see him start on the wing. I don't think that, like, it's so funny with how fandom works because I feel like I've watched him play for a few years, and like not many people like probably saw him play when he was playing at the start of Flegg, and like he became like somewhat underrated and didn't really have many raps on him. But then Tim Sheen started mentioning him as a potential fullback option. And now I think he's become somewhat a little bit overhyped in terms of like what he's going to do when he comes into first grade. But in saying that, I definitely think that he's just one of those like big athletic wingers that's perfect for the modern day. And we also have kind of struggled with yardage as well. So for that reason, I think he's ready for first grade.
Are you buying or selling Buller as a first grade
week? I'm going to sell it. I don't think he's quite ready yet. I can't remember whether it was. I don't think he's quite ready yet. I can't remember the framing of the question. But we're in a desperate spot right now. I said on the weekend I'd like to be picking him this weekend, and that still stands. I don't think he's at that level I'd want him to be at to make an easy transition to the first grade. But we're in a fairly desperate spot at the moment, so I don't think he's quite ready, but I'd probably be picking him anyway.
Declan, David Norfoluma will play another first grade game for the West Tigers in 2023. Buy, sell or hold?
I'm gonna sell that. I think he's gone.
You think he'll be just out of the side or shipped off, or could be either?
It could be either. I think Guy kind of touched on it. I think Junior Tupou coming and just playing really well in that position, playing really well in the New South Wales Cup as well. I think he's going to stay there. And then, I think someone like Jerome Buller will also come in and do a good job.
Yeah, Gary, I'm just holding this one because I just think, an injury or two and we don't have much depth there.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not at the club for much longer at all. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next couple of weeks he's announced he's gone somewhere else. If I was in charge, I'll be trying to make a deal happen for him to be somewhere else in the next couple of weeks. I don't think we'll see him again.
Okay, we'll do one more of these, boys. I'll scratch that one. I'll leave that for another episode because that could explode if I do that one. I'll tell you that one off air. Declan, you will attend more than 8 games this season. Buy, sell or hold?
How many home games do we have left at
Campbelltown? Well, there'd be 1 left at Leichhardt and 3 at Campbelltown, and there'd be obviously 3 or 4 at CommBank, and there'd be plenty more in Sydney. So
it's 2 at CommBank.
There's the opportunity to go to 8 games, but it's whether you really want to. And I sort of, I used to go, to be honest, to probably every home game and probably 3 or 4 on the road. So it'd be 15 or 16 a year. COVID was a bit funny because you couldn't go to games. But the last year, it's sort of like when you start so poorly, I've got to admit the motivation to go to games is a little bit lower. Are you the same?
Yeah, I'm the same. It's sometimes even harder to come on the podcast and talk because, there's not much positivity as they're going around. So, yeah, I'm gonna sell going to more than 10 games.
8 games it was, but
8 games, yeah.
And Gary, you're that as well. More than 8. I can just sense you're the positive one. You stay positive most of the time.
Yeah, no, I'll be definitely at more than 8 games this year. Something seriously would have to happen for me not to be there, and that wouldn't be football related. I don't know. Maybe I keel over and die. I don't make it to 8 games, but
let's not hope not that, Gary. It's not that bad, the 4 losses. But if we lose 24 games, then maybe we can throw that up as an option. But I get the feeling I'll definitely go to the Leichhardt game. I'll probably go to a couple of Campbelltown games, although I wasn't out there last year, and I actually don't mind going out to CommBank, Gary, because there's a bit more of a vibe about that place if you want to go and have a beer before the game or something. I know it is, Joel calls it Parramatta Stadium, but it's better than going to ANZ for me in terms of you want to have a drink before the game or something. There's a bit more atmosphere.
Yeah, and we usually do an ambush event there, so I don't have much choice when we're doing the ambush event, so I have to go. But I like football, so and I've lived through some days where we didn't win many games, but there's always a chance in rugby league. So I don't like it when I don't go to a game and we win. So I don't like missing the wins.
Okay, boys. Well, I'm sure none of us will be in Brisbane this week. Although
Steve's going.
Steve's halfway. Is he actually going?
Steve is going up there on Saturday to go to the game.
Good on him. Maybe he can be our lucky charm. He'll have to go to every game if we win because, Declan, we take on the Broncos on Saturday. It is first versus last, but believe it or not, we've beaten them the last 4 times we've played them, including 3 times at Suncorp. We haven't lost to the Broncos since 2018. Do you read anything into historical data like that? I tend to not. I think sometimes it can just be fluky, although I think going to Suncorp that sort of stadium and arena sometimes can lift opposition players just because it's, the home of football in some respects, at least in Brisbane.
Yeah, I don't really read too much into the whole boogeyman thing. I think that we probably caught them in a really good time last season, just as they were about to kind of descend into a form slump. I don't think they came with the best attitude last year. I think they probably thought that if they just played well for the first 20 minutes, we would go away. And when that didn't happen, they kind of self-combusted a little bit. But I do think, though, Rodgers this weekend, to be honest.
Okay. Let's talk about the team changes, Gary, because there were a couple. This is classic Tim Sheen's bench. I've been waiting for it. It's taken a month. He's named, a pretty normal bench. Not this week, Gary. Stafford Toa's on the bench. Jake Simpkins, Justin Matamua, and I think it's Alex Twal. That is a typical Tim Sheen's bench there, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
What's he thinking?
Look, to be honest, I like to go with a few more forwards than that. My only guess is that at some point Stafford Toa goes to centre and Kapoa goes into the second row rotation. I don't know. It wouldn't be what I would be doing. I find the admission of Sean Bloor to be a little bit puzzling. I thought he's been playing fairly good football, but towards the end of that game the other day, he did look to be struggling with fitness a little bit. So maybe it's just to get him some more time in more game time. That's the only thing I can think of with Bloor being dropped. But I don't think we can really afford to do that in the position we're in either. You can't just send a guy back to get more game time. So I find that Sean Bloor being dropped a little bit puzzling.
Yeah, I was surprised. A bit like Joffa the week before, but I guess I don't mind if there's little things that perhaps they see on the video, little 1%ers that guys aren't doing. Declan, I'm happy to see Jake Simpkins back because I think Appy's trying to do everything at the moment. I think he could do with a 15, 20-minute break. He's missing some tackles. And I'm happy to see Justin Matamua on the bench just because he's a player that's been, spooked by the club for probably the last 6 months or 9 months.
Yeah, I think it's great to see Jake Simpkins back. It looked like a really bad concussion he caught against the Knights, so it's good to see him bounce back. He had a pretty solid game against the North Sydney Bears in the Cup, so hopefully he comes on and, as you said, relieves Appy a little bit, because I do agree with you. I think it's a little bit of a worry that, the Penrith Panthers only played him 60 minutes last season, which looked like that was the optimal amount of time. We were trying to push him for 80. So I think that's the right thing to do because you don't want to squeeze too much. And then, he loses that kind of productivity and attack. And then Justin Matamua, I was a huge fan of starting him in round one. I just think he adds more in terms of that passing game than basically any other forward we have. And he also has been pumping out 80 minutes in New South Wales Cup as well. So he's got a bit of a motor behind him. And I think that he's going to be more important for our future endeavours in the forward pack than someone like Alex Safar. So that's why I'm pretty keen that he's playing.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see Matamua there as well. I think he's our lock forward moving forward. He's the type of lock forward we need. He's a guy that can ball play from that position. I really thought the only blemish on his start of the season, I think he tried way too hard in that first trial and threw pushed some passes that he probably shouldn't have thrown and was just trying to do too much. So hopefully coming off the bench, he can just inject himself into the game and build into an NRL player, because I think the potential is really there, and I really hope that he can develop into that ball-playing 13 that we really need at the moment.
Declan, we know Brisbane are flying at the moment. They're 4-0. They do have a pretty formidable side on paper. They've been building it up for a couple of years. But there were times, their last two home games, they were trailing the Dragons till about 15 minutes to go, and they were trailing the Dolphins till about 10 minutes to go. So I do think they're the sort of side that if you get in front of them early, and we failed to score the first try last week. Luke Brooks completely bombed a try, which would have potentially changed that game against Melbourne. I just think that's so important the way we're going at the moment with no confidence is if you can get in front early, I think this game could be quite close.
Yeah, but it just comes again because we know that the Broncos will be able to score points, but can we score points? I think that's the big problem, because I honestly don't think defence has been that bad this year. I know we leaked 20 points, 20 plus points against the Storm, but I think that all in all, I think it's been pretty good. So, I'm sure we can defend reasonably well, but it's just can we get over the white line? What worries me.
Gary, I know you're probably not a gambler punter, but I see 15.5 start. I think we can cover that. I know we've won. Is there any chance we can win on the weekend?
There's always a chance. It's a 2-horse race. I can't sit here and say I'm confident that we're going to win. I don't expect us to win, but it's rugby league, and sides do turn things around fairly quickly at times. I think we showed that last year. We were really ordinary for 5 weeks last year, and then we had 2 games where we put Parramatta and Souths away when we played really good football. So it is possible. Do I think it'll happen this weekend? Probably not. I think we're a little bit further away from playing the football that we need to challenge a side like Brisbane. But I'll still go in there. Come Saturday, I'm going to think we can win.
Yeah, come Saturday, you'll be sending us a text, Gary, saying first win of the year coming, but we'll wait and see. Let's just do our tips before we get a nail-on prediction for this game. Roosters Eels, Declan, Thursday night.
I'm going to tip Parramatta for this one. I think that they've kind of found a little bit of form and they seem a little bit battle-hardened, but I've been a little bit disappointed with the Roosters so far this season, just compared to what I think they should end up as, which could be the Premiers.
Yeah, I know you hate Parramatta, Gary, but I still think if they get their stuff together, they'll make the 8. That was a pretty good game against Penrith last week.
Yeah, I expect Parramatta will be in the 8 by the end of the season. I don't expect them to do much once they get there, though. But yeah, I think they'll probably win this week too.
Canberra, Penrith, Declan in Canberra. Canberra going like bastards. Penrith will win this, surely.
Yeah, Penrith for me.
South Melbourne, Gary, at Homebush. I think South specials for me.
Yep, I think South have it all over them. Melbourne did improve a lot last weekend, I thought, but the first 3 weeks of the comp, they were fairly poor as well. So, yeah, I think South will get them.
Manly, Newcastle, Declan. That's in Mudgee, Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think Manly will win by a lot.
This is an interesting one. Dragons, Dolphins in at Wollongong. Gary, this is when you sort of know if the balloon's popped, if the Dolphins sort of get beat by St George. But how could you possibly tip St George the way they're playing?
Yeah, I can't tip St George, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins started to fall over a bit. I think O'Sullivan's injury is going to hurt them a lot, but I still think they'll have too much for St George this weekend.
Sharks, Warriors, Declan. I think Sharks, even though Warriors have been good, I think Sharks about to go on a run. He's a great player, Nico Hines.
Yeah, he's a great player, and he was a backup at one point. So he's come so far, hasn't he? So yeah, I'm gonna go the Sharks as well.
I think that was a little in-joke there. Bulldogs, Cowboys, Gary. That's at Homebush on a Sunday night. I don't think I'll be watching that game, but who's going to win?
Really, you're not going to watch it for the return of Josh Reynolds to the NRL?
Please, no.
Who's playing again? Canterbury and who?
Cowboys.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys will get them. I don't. The Dogs, I think, are really up and down.
And for Saturday night, Declan, do you have any prediction outside of a Brisbane win? I think just my only real take is it'll be closer than people perhaps think. I think we'll only get done by 8 or 10. What do you reckon?
I reckon that I'm going to a bottomless brunch on Saturday, so I'll be heavily intoxicated when the game comes around. And in terms of a score, I reckon it'll be 30 points to 10.
Gary, what's your score?
You almost stole mine. Mine's 28 to 10.
Okay. Well, I'm the positive one here. How's this working, Gary? You score you being negative all the time, and I says it's an 8-point loss. You're both saying we're going to lose by 20.
We'll get through the Saturday, and I'll swing around though. You'll get worse the closer we get to the game.
Okay. Yachty's quiz, boys. It's coming.
God.
It's coming. I've just got to find it on my phone. There's a couple of tricky ones as usual this week. I know Steve will be breathing a sigh of relief that he's not on because
he'll message me tomorrow and say he answered them all correct.
Question 1. Name the 7 years. It's a tough one. That we have. West Tigers have beaten the Broncos 7 times out of 14 at Suncorp. Can you name the 7 years that we have won at Suncorp?
2022.
Yep.
2021.
2003.
Yes. How do you remember that one?
It was Benji Marshall's second or third game.
First start in the run-on side. He started at fullback. So that's there was one where we scored a solo try to win the game right at the end. I think it was tied,
Was that the baby Broncos game? Was that 2007?
No, we lost the baby Broncos game. This was the one where it was recent. It was Michael Cheekham scoring under Madge in
Oh,
Yeah, he did
2019.
too. He stepped
A
through
late
the line.
try.
Yeah.
We also won there in 2016, which was a Mitchell Moses field goal, got us over the line. 2010, we won the game very late. It was a Lottie Dikiri try. I'm pretty sure it was off a Robbie Farah crossfield kick. I've got this memory of that one. And there was one, 2006. It was a club stalwart's debut. Anyone remember who it was? Debut? Fresh 17-year-old with long hair. He was back then.
Chris Lawrence ran down the sideline and scored a try.
Yeah. So that was the amazing record at Suncorp, considering how bad we've been as a club over the past 20 years to have 7 wins. So maybe it could be 8 on Saturday. Question 2: which 2005 Premiership winning player? So this is a player that did play in the grand final. Had the least amount of appearances throughout the entire season. It's a bit of a one you probably wouldn't expect because I think he was definitely one of the senior guys. Least amount of appearances from someone on that. He was in the starting side.
Was it Mark O'Neill?
It was.
Oh, I completely guessed that.
Not only one of the senior guys, was captain for the majority of the season.
Yeah, he started the year as captain, Gary, and then I think he got injured. And Sheen stuck with Prince, which caused a bit of a ruckus, but he got back in the side and got that ring in his final year as a player. Question 3. Paul Whatuira appeared in 58 games for the West Tigers. Which one of these positions did he never play for us? So this is a multiple choice. You can both have a crack. A, wing. B, centre. C, 5'8", or D, the bench. Gary.
I'll say wing.
Declan?
I'm going to say bench.
No, it was the wing. He played 55 games in the centres. Tim Sheens obviously went crazy one week because he played him at 5'8", apparently, in round 24 of 2007, and he started on the bench twice. Question 4. Name the 3 NRL clubs the West Tigers have had a draw against. A draw. Back in the days before Golden Point.
Some of them would have been after.
Yeah, but they could have been, but there have been none after.
There hasn't?
Nah, so they were all in the first 2 years. There was one you should remember.
Brisbane Broncos game.
Yeah, first game for the club. That was a 24 draw at Campbelltown. There was also
Souths?
No Souths. I was at this other one. I just remember it now. It was 14 points all against the Eels in 2000. I remember Joel Kane kicked a penalty goal to get the draw after full time. And I can't say I got any memory of this one. 2001, we drew 16 all with the Sharks, apparently.
I really need Jordy to start asking questions about the 2010 team so I can actually show what I know.
Before you were alive. Were you alive in 2001? You were.
Yes, I was. But
what you were doing. Whilst playing for us, this is an interesting one. Which New South Wales stadium did Robbie Farah never win a game at while playing for us?
Would it be Brookvale?
Declan's gone with Brookvale. And Gary, you said Marathon, did you?
Yeah, whatever the Newcastle stadium.
Yeah. Declan, you're right. He went 0 for 4 at Brookvale. Losses 2005, 6, 7, and 2014. All right, this is the last one, boys. It's a who am I? So bear with me. I was with the West Tigers for 2 seasons. I tasted victory in 32% of my games. I was involved with the club's record loss prior to 2022. I debuted for one side of the joint venture and I debuted against the other. Interesting. I am the only player to have won the Wooden Spoon and the Dally M in the same season. That's a cool stat. A lot of blank looks here. I am a grand final winner. Not an ex-player for the West Tigers, an ex-coach. Grand final winner, debuted for Wests.
It was Terry Lamb.
Terry Lamb. So again, Declan's long before his time, but coached in 2001 and 2002. lost the game 64-0 to the Melbourne Storm. And of course, Gary, as an old Balmain fan, you would remember him taking out Errol Hanley in the 1988 grand final.
I will never forget it.
Wasn't the most popular West Tigers personality, Terry Lambert. Thank you, Yachty, to the quiz. Again, I'm not sure who's won, but I'm sure you'll both be claiming victory.
Yeah, I always win, even if the other person answers more questions correct.
Hi, boys. Like I said, it's been a long podcast, but we did have a lot of topics to get through tonight. So hopefully we did them justice. Have a good weekend, boys, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, guys.
Rising up, straight to the top. Had the guts, got